Well, it seems like our lion tracking has come to fruition. And here we go, the two males that we've been tracking all morning, we found them on Twin Dams. So it's Mfumo, the authority. You can see how well his little, well, it's now a little, but at one point his massive hole in the face. Oh, and I think that's Tinyo. I haven't seen decently yet because he's been snoozing, but it looks to be Tinyo. So there we go, two members of the Birmingham coalition. Oh, bless you. Did you suck in a little bit too much dust there, but there we go. It looks like Tinyo, the tooth. You can see, yeah, I can see that remnant of a split lip just there as he turned. Now, it's quite interesting when we look at both of them here. Now, you can see Tinyo's mane is darkening faster. You can see underneath getting really nice and dark. I'm just going to move the vehicle a little bit so we got a good view of both of them. Now that Tinyo has decided to raise his head, that's it. Just, we want to see the left-hand side of your face. Stop turning your head. I know you're watching my tires. Yep, it is definitely Tinyo. I'm happy with that now. We know who they are. Now, boys, it's very important. We want roaring this morning. And you've been roaring all morning. I heard you from about 4 o'clock making lots of noise. Now you need to make some noise for us. They're looking quite well fed. 3 of them were seen together yesterday in Buffelshoek. So these two plus one of the other, Nena or Utsuku. But I haven't seen either of those for quite some time. Big boys. So now this is a perfect eyes, look at that. Stare straight through you. Now, you can see the battle scars that litter a male lion. And as I was saying, you can now see his mane quite clearly. See how it's much, much darker underneath. There we go, than Mfumo's. And he's getting that lovely little, oh, sus. Let's do some grooming. So, definitely, you can see that also that dark mohawk starting to form right in the center. And Mfumo's getting there. He might be a little bit younger. Now, we don't exactly know the exact ages of all the Birmingham boys, so the coalition has got different ages in it. And he could just be, Tinyo could be a little bit older, judging from how dark his mane is, and also just how tattered his ears are and stuff in comparison to Mfumo. He's still quite blonde. He is getting that little, there we go, see his little nick out of the ear, and he's still very battle scarred. And there we go, you see he's just looking a little bit more ragged than Mfumo. Now, David was wondering who's older, and I'd say there's not much difference between them, maybe a year at most, but Tinyo definitely looks to be the older of the two. Now, they're looking to the south, which is bad for us. We want them to look to the north. We want them to hear some commotion that brings them deeper into Djuma. We're only about 150 meters, 200 meters away from our southern boundary, and I'm very, very happy we didn't find any lion tracks there, and we found these two beautiful boys. Now, they've walked quite far from where they were yesterday in Buffelshoek. They've gone from very close to the Kruger boundary. They've headed north, or I'm guessing they must have come through around Gowrie cut line. We found their tracks on quarantine, so they've probably done a good 10 kilometers to 12 kilometers last night, and they're probably going to rest up. There's always a possibility they might get up and move a bit further to the south, but for now it looks like they're going to rest up. Now, it looks like they might have been having a scrap quite recently. There we go. There's some fresh sort of punctures. Oh, and you can see on his foot there, it looks like a bit of blood. Yeah, there's a little red dot there. A little bit to the left. See, looks like some fresh blood there. And there's some, looks like a fresh scratch a little bit higher, and some puncture marks. Now this is not uncommon. Male lions always boxing with something, each other, or of course the females, or even some marauders, but more than likely each other. Oh, isn't that wonderful how well that's healed? But if we go down to his nose, he's obviously tired of smelling himself, and he's smelling a little wild aniseed. So he's inhaling the licorice. Look at that. Remember, this is 100% live, so we never know what's going to happen next. They are snoozing currently, but they might jump into action. I'm really hoping that they give us a big roar. You can see they're both looking very well fed, big bellies. And he's managed to urinate all over himself. That's not uncommon with male lions. They just sort of lie there and urinate. Not too worried with personal hygiene. Yeah, Tinyo using his foot as a pillow. Hi, Brandon, who's in Rhode Island, who's wondering how long the Birmingham coalition has been in power. Now, the first sort of serious pushing they did of the Matimbas, if I remember correctly, was October last year. And I'd say probably by January, February, they were in full reign, even though they hadn't quite managed to subjugate all the females in the area. Oh, yes, life's tough. So, about 7-8 months now, probably closer to 8 months, that they've been the top coalition in the area. Now, as I said, they're probably about 6 years old, around between 6 and 7, which means unless another big coalition of males comes in, they're looking probably to sit on the top for the next 3 years or so, probably even about 4 years on the top. That's quite normal. What did you hear, mister? What did you smell? Oh, nothing that interesting. Or head down. Of course, there used to be 5 of them. The one that was known as Tsotsi or Skabanga or Scrapper, lots of different names. He expired due to a wound caused from a buffalo hunt. Now, lion genetics are quite an interesting thing, and they are very, very varied. And okay, so we'll get back to genetics now. We're just going to answer a question quickly from Marion, it's a double header, and it's how do coalitions form and how long do they last? Now, how they form, there's a couple of ways that they form. The most common way is that a group of related males, possibly brothers or half-brothers of a similar age, will leave their natal or home pride together. Now, of course, moving out in a group gives them a better chance of survival than heading out singularly. The other way, which is also quite common, is that you might get 2 related males who will move out of an area, and then during their nomadic phase, they might bump into 2 unrelated males or 1 unrelated male, and then they join up because there's strength in numbers. Now, particularly in this part of the Kruger Park and South Africa, you get very big coalitions. And if we just go through the coalitions and the size they started at, you had the Mapochos, there were 6, and the Majingalans 5. I think the Sand River males down south, there's 4 of them. And now we've got originally 5 Birminghams. The Salati males were originally 4 or 5 as well. Now that's because there's such competition between the coalitions here for females, for breeding rights, for territory, that a single male will find it very difficult to survive. Oh, Matimbas, I nearly forgot, were originally 5 as well. Now, what happens sometimes is coalitions over time might split, to answer the second part of your question, Marion. Normally, they'll stay together as long as possible till they are killed by normally other lions. But so generally, the coalition will probably form when the animals are 3 to 4 years old, and they'll last till they die, so 12 years old. Now, of course, in certain circumstances, animals die quite young, like Scrapper did. He died before he was 6 years old and due to a wound from a buffalo. So there's no sort of hard and fast rule about how long coalitions will survive, but I'd say generally once they're in power, 4 to 5 years is a good sort of estimate of how long these coalitions will survive. Now, I was going to start chatting about genetics in lions. Now, originally, I think there were 37 subspecies named. Now, these have all been brought down. There are only 2 distinct subspecies, and that is the African lion and the Asiatic lion. The Asiatic lion lives in India. Now, if we go, let's stick on the African lions for now. You've got Western clade and Eastern clade lions, which is quite interesting. So almost down the middle of Africa, you've got 2 different clades that are slightly genetically different, but nothing near enough to call them a different species. And they cross over in a couple of spots, but if you look carefully, it's actually fascinating. So Kruger lions and Tanzanian lions are quite closely related. Botswana, because it's in the middle, is related to both. So it's a fascinating thing if you look at the genetics. And I've been fortunate enough to work on one of the big genetic lion projects with a non-profit organization called the African, I'm trying to remember the acronym now, APCRO, the African Predator Conservation Research Organization. And that is run by a very good friend of my dad's, a guy by the name of Dr. Mike Briggs. And he's one of the leading experts on lion genetics in the world. And he is the one who taught me all about clades and where the different lions come from. And just racking my brain for a bit more information. It's been a while since I read all those papers, but I'm sure I'll remember. Now, of course, a lot of the genetic stuff is that you've got these Kalahari lions or Cape lions that are extinct, and Barbary lions, or woodlands. We'll see if we can find him just now. But now with being able to test some museum sort of taxidermistry samples and things like that, there's almost no difference. You will find lions in desert areas tend to develop much bigger manes, and the reason for that is the climate they're in, and that's to protect them from the sandstorms and from the heat. It's not so much because they're a different species. Here we go. This is what I was thinking about. So, for example, quite interesting, West African lions, which are up in the Sahel region, so Chad and Sudan, going up that side, are actually more closely related to the Asiatic lion than they are to sub-Saharan lions, to the South and East African lions, which probably means that the Asiatic lions, during the last land bridge between Africa and Asia, moved through from that area, which makes sense. It's closest to the land bridge. massive dinner plate feet. A nice full belly. Now, Big Blue's wondering whether wild lions have dew claws like domestic cats. Indeed, they do. Let's see if we can find one. Look at that. I'm trying to find out. Sorry, there's a bit listening. There's an update on Karula. I was just listening to the radio. No, it sounds like they might have found her down in the south. But let's carry on chatting about lions. And so generally, the way they, without mitochondrial DNA, the way they separate species is from skull morphology. So slight differences in the skull, and it has to be present in more than sort of 80% of the skulls modified for it to actually go through, or not modified, examined for it to go through. So it is amazing that Savo lions, for example, in Kenya, are far more closely related to Kruger lions than lions on the western side of Kenya. Now, the clade system is separated by the Great Rift Valley. Now, in East Africa, the Great Rift Valley is very, very obvious. Out here in South Africa, it's not so obvious, but there is a fault line that runs all the way from Kenya down through South Africa. We're on the eastern side of that fault line at the moment, and it goes out to sea in Lake St. Lucia in northern Zululand. So it is incredible if you look at the geology underneath. And of course, at certain times, maybe the Great Rift Valley was far more of a insurpassable or more difficult to pass than it is now, and that's what separated these lions 100,000 years ago. So now there is also the middle. They're not called a clade, but they're just called the middle lions, which seem to be a combination of both western and eastern clade lions, and those occur sort of through central Zambia and into Botswana. Botswana, very interestingly, has both clades and the middle clade, so it's got all three. Now, of course, they can still all interbreed, and they haven't been separated for long enough to even close become a distinct species. Lovely bird calling and giving us the ambient sounds. We've got that, which is an orange-breasted bushshrike. We heard the chirr of a woodlands kingfisher. What else can we hear? Oh, there we go. Definitely Tinyo. You can see that wound. And here, Levalant's cuckoo as well. Dedrick's cuckoo. Klaas's cuckoo. So they're probably not going to move too much this morning. And said they've probably done a good 10 to 15 kilometers overnight. Male lions are capable of doing further than that. They can walk up to 25 kilometers if they need to, but it is unusual. Normally you'll find 5 to 10 kilometers is their general sort of movement, and also it all depends whether they rushing off to chase off invaders, or they're just doing a good scent marking and boundary patrol. They were roaring a lot last night, and that's why we jumped further to the south to try find them. Morning. Any other male lions in this area recently apart from the Birmingham coalition? Karen, there were 2 avoca males that snuck through the corner and into Sibambili. They've now gone south, and I heard there were some young males that came onto Inkoro from the Kruger, but way too young to sort of challenge the Birmingham boys. No adult sort of or real challenges to the Birmingham's throne in the last while, but it could change tomorrow. And that's the thing. You never know what's going to happen out here in the African bush. Now, you've seen Byron and myself searching around the African bush. There's a third person who's